At Maverick Public Relations, growing your influence is their specialty. NPR works with remarkable companies in the cannabis industry to deliver exceptional results. Experience big agency expertise and outstanding client service delivered by seasoned and knowledgeable experts. Connect with Maverick PR today and move your company to the next level. Visit them today at www.themaverickpr.com.
From a studio high above the clouds of the Okanagan Valley, this is the Cannabis Podcast. Exploring the world of Canadian cannabis culture, one toke at a time. Now, here's your host and bud tender, Gary Johnston.
Welcome back to episode number 4 of the Cannabis Podcast. If you were just tuning in for the first time, welcome. We're glad you dropped by for a podcast on a Canadian's cannabis culture. And that's what our focus is. Let's talk about cannabis, let's talk about all aspects of cannabis, and do so in a way that enlightens, engages, and perhaps also entertains. This week, it's been a busy week. We've been talking to a whole bunch of people. We've got interviews lined up for the next 2 or 3 weeks. This week, here's what's up in store for you. You may have heard me talk last week about a gift that my son was giving me, and I changed it into a gift from the BC Cannabis stores. That gift arrived, so I can't think of a better strain explain to do than that one. And that is on Galiano from Broken Coast. That is coming up in this episode. We'll have a little bit of an update on retail because things are slowly changing here in the Okanagan and elsewhere. We now have our 3rd private retailer in British Columbia. We'll touch on that a little bit. We've got a great conversation coming up with an independent cannabis retailer from Newfoundland. I'm sure it's somebody you'll recognize from that infamous day of October 17th when everybody was trying to be the first to buy or sell cannabis. We have Thomas H. Clarke lined up for our conversation this week. And in addition to that, we are going to touch on a whole bunch of different things, some stuff we've got coming up in the new year, and a whole bunch of other fun. And who knows, because this is the episode just before Christmas, there may also be a special visitor who suddenly shows up. Let's get on with episode number 4 of the Cannabis Podcast. This is a week where we have had more activity in retailing here in British Columbia from a cannabis perspective than we have for a while. Wow, big change. There's been one new store. Our 3rd private retailer is now open way up north in Pouce Coupé, although they would consider themselves not to be up north. But that is the 3rd private retailer that is open. We're still waiting for some activity here in the Okanagan. Word is that Lake Country did reevaluate their assessment of changing some of the bylaws to allow a cannabis retailer, and it looks like, last word is, they might actually be open just after the new year. Sometime in the first week of January, we are expecting that there may be a store in Lake Country. This week, we talked with both the City of Kelowna and the City of Penticton. We'll feature those interviews next week because they're going to give you a bit better perspective of what's happening with the larger municipalities. It seems in my mind that the smaller municipalities are a little quicker, a little more limber in being able to get all the regulations in place and have their private retailers for cannabis up and running. We saw it in Kimberley, and we also in the future hope to have Tamara on from Tamarack Cannabis in Kimberley at some point later on. We hope to talk to her in January. So the landscape is changing. There are now becoming more and more outlets for retail, but unfortunately here on the Okanagan, based on the discussions we had this week with both Penticton and the City of Kelowna, we're likely not going to see a retailer until late spring and perhaps early summer. But at least the landscape is changing ever so slightly. Of course, the other big news from this week is that the federal government laid out the proposed rules for cannabis edibles. There's been a lot of talk of it ever since cannabis was legalized on October 17th. But of course, in any of the legal stores right now, you cannot buy edibles. You will be able to do so, let's see, on October 17th, what a surprise, 2019. So another year before edibles will be on the shelf. And some of the proposed regulations that they have put forth is edibles must be shelf-stable. In other words, they do not require refrigeration or freezing. Edibles must offer consumers nutritional information, including the ingredients and the best before date. Naturally occurring caffeine in items like chocolates, tea, or coffee is allowed, but the use of caffeine as an additive is prohibited. Extracts can contain flavoring agents, but no sugars, sweeteners, or sweetening agents, obviously trying to get away from any appeal to kids here in cannabis edibles. Flavors that appeal to youth, for example, such as dessert or confectionery flavors, are banned on packaging and labeling of cannabis extracts. Use of meat products, poultry, or fish is banned, unless it's dried by someone authorized under provincial or territorial law. Really? There are people who are authorized to dry fish and poultry? Wow, I'm learning so much in this world. And finally, forms that pose a greater risk to health, such as eye drops or needles, will be prohibited in the cannabis edibles platform. So another change in our ever-expanding cannabis world is occurring. Cannabis edibles legislation has been placed. They're looking for your contributions. The federal government is encouraging everyone to contribute to the discussion. And I think you've got about 60 days to contribute to that discussion. So take a look, do a search for the federal government cannabis edibles legislation, and then you'll find a link to where you can add your opinion. And it's a good thing that everybody gets involved so that we do this right and we don't have to redo it all over again. Edibles coming our way October 17th, 2019.
Are you ready for liftoff? Don't miss Canada's #1 cannabis conference and trade show, Lift & Co Expo, coming this May 12 to 15 to Metro Toronto Convention Centre. Level up your industry intel at the Lift Cannabis Business Conference. Connect with movers and shakers from across the cannabis industry and preview new products and services from 250-plus exhibitors. Plus, everyone loves Lift & Co Expo's prizes, live music, and more. Visit liftexpo.ca for tickets. That's liftexpo.ca.
From the cannabis-infused studio in the clouds, this is the Cannabis Podcast.
I have been looking forward to this interview since I first started the podcast. He was one of the first people I wanted to talk to, but he's a very busy guy. So connecting his schedule on the East Coast with my schedule close to the West Coast was difficult, but today is that day. And I am very pleased to introduce you to an independent retailer from Portugal Cove, Newfoundland, Mr. Thomas H. Clarke. Thomas, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Thomas is the owner of THC Distribution in Newfoundland. What is THC Distribution, Thomas?
Well, I'm Thomas H. Clarke, and my business, THC Distribution, is the first legal place in Canada to sell cannabis in the whole country. And I've been flat out selling cannabis for the government for the last 2 months.
Wow, good for you. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because you were one of the first to sell legal cannabis in the country. And I understand that you actually sold that to your dad.
Yeah, my father was my first customer, and he's been my favorite person to smoke with over the years. And I had a couple of celebrities and a couple of companies who approached me wanting to be the first customer, and I said, we can do a mock video of you being the first customer, but my father is going to be my actual first customer.
That is so cool, Thomas. I really love that story. And I also understand from reading some of the news on the event that he actually had to borrow some money from you in order to make that sale. Is that true?
Yes, because he didn't have any cash on him, and he would have had to use a debit card, and I wanted the transaction to go through quicker, so I just gave him a couple of 20s out of my pocket, and he bought some pre-roll joints. And he said it was a long time coming. He always thought that cannabis would be legalized well before this. He figured that Trudeau's father was going to do it back in the day.
That's right.
But of course that never happened, and now we're here, and it's pretty good. It's a good feeling.
It is a really good feeling. I have to agree. So give me a sense of what the feeling was like in your store on that night when you sold the first pot.
Oh, well, we opened at midnight, so we were well ahead of the rest of the country. I know that there was three or four stores on the Avalon who opened at midnight to claim to be the first place to sell cannabis in Canada. Right. One of the places was a Tweed store where their VP or their president of the company came down and actually made the first sale. But I'm an independent guy. I've been advocating for cannabis legalization for years.
Yeah.
I wrote all the provincial government MPs and MHAs to say, we need to localize this industry and you need to open it up to small businesses because that would be the best way to benefit Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah.
And, through me going public about, selling cannabis for a number of years and always being any chance I had to get on the radio to talk about how important it was to let small businesses open, I did. And I think I had a little bit of an impact. I can't say I'm the reason why Newfoundland went this route, but I definitely had an impact. And then, the RFP process, the Newfoundland Liquor Corporation took bids from different companies to see who they would give licenses to.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was lucky enough, of course, to be one of the chosen ones. And I think that was because of my big mouth, partially, but also because of the area I chose. I chose the town of Portugal Cove, which is just outside of St. John's. I'm only 8 minutes from the St. John's International Airport.
Okay.
But it's kind of off the radar for most companies. So I knew that they were going to give one license to each postal code.
Oh, okay.
And I chose. So choosing this postal code wasn't by fluke. It was actually pretty strategic on my behalf.
You sound like a very strategic individual.
Yes, and we've been open now for 2 months, and I've done $300,000 in sales. We had 1 week where I never had any product, and then other weeks when I only had a small amount of what I would call mediocre weed, where some people wouldn't buy. So, all in all, I think once the supply issues get figured out, it's going to be pretty good. One thing I am a little upset about is the commission rate. I only get about 7.5% commission off the cannabis I'm purchasing. So my margins are tight. I have to sell a lot of bongs and papers and T-shirts and books and stuff like that in order to survive. But at this point, I'm making enough to pay my employees and to pay the bills and pay myself a salary. So, that's pretty good after only any retail store that's been open for 2 months who is making enough to pay the bills and pay the employees. I call that a win.
I would call that a win, a double win. Well done, Thomas. That's excellent news.
Some of the problems that I see about it from coast to coast is the packaging is atrocious.
Isn't it, though?
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. We don't need 120 grams of packaging for 3.5 grams of marijuana.
Yeah, or even worse, I got some from the BC Cannabis store, and they are selling 1 gram in essentially it's the size of a small aspirin bottle. Like insane.
Yeah.
So
that's the same down here.
It is the same there, eh?
So what I think is the reasonable solution to this is to open up a hemp farm market where people can make some kind of a plastic out of the used cannabis stocks and add some hemp stock, add some hemp to that, and come up with a package that will break down over a small amount of time, but is still safe. And it's not up to Health Canada to keep the marijuana out of the hands of kids. It's up to us parents to do that ourselves.
That's true. I agree.
So I think it's a bit of overkill, and the product has been really dry. I'd say 85, even 90% of the cannabis that I've received here has not been cured properly. The buds are crunchy. They break apart in your hands and turn to dust. There's only one licensed producer who I'm truly impressed with, and that's Broken Coast Cannabis from out your way.
Okay.
They have the highest quality weed on the legal market, and it's not dry and crunchy when it shows up, so they're curing it well.
Nice.
I wish the other guys could take some notes from them, maybe,
How true. I myself has experienced the same thing. I've gotten a lot of pretty crunchy, pretty brown-looking, tiny little buds.
Yes, and a lot of it, some packages you open and, there's 2 buds in a 3.5, which is great. But other ones, there's a gram of stock and a whole bunch of shake, right?
That is so true. I've gotten a lot of stock since legalization has occurred. Yeah, absolutely. So you're experiencing much the same thing, and you actually have had some times where you didn't have any supply.
Yes, and the only company that's giving me a steady supply is Canopy. Every week they tell me what's available, and that same week I get the order. Everyone else has been very sporadic, or they say, here's your shipment now, and I don't think we'll have another shipment for 3 or 4 weeks, but let me get back to you. Okay. Or some companies are even saying, I don't know when we'll have stuff to ship to you, but I'll let you know.
Wow. That's amazing. Like somebody did something wrong here.
And the thing about the cannabis industry is if you're trying to get the black market out of the picture, that's never going to happen with this quality of cannabis. And if you come to your dealer and one day he's got great weed that's 20% THC, and then the next day you go back and all he has is 10% THC cannabis, you're not going to continue to go there. I need to have a steady supply of high THC cannabis.
Yeah, of course you do.
In stock at all times. And that's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think.
No, and it's shocking, for myself coming from the home of BC Bud, it's just shocking to see what the country has done with legalization. It's not what I was envisioning, that's for sure.
No, that's for sure. And you have an abundance of high quality quadruple A cannabis out there. And it's going on the black market for less than $1,000 a pound now, I understand.
That's it. Yeah,
so,
it's true.
I'm paying 7% less than retail.
Yeah.
How am I going to compete?
That's right. Yeah, those are pretty slim margins for you.
And another thing I'm hearing from my customers is that, everybody wants some CBD oil or a CBD tincture or something that has no THC in it.
Okay.
And I haven't been able to get one single drop of that since opening.
Is that right?
Not one license. We deal with 7 licensed producers here so far. That's how many the Newfoundland Liquor Corp has on board.
Okay.
And not one of those producers, and they're all the big ones, Aurora, Canopy, Afria, CanTrust, Eve, Broken Coast. Not one of these licensed producers has a just CBD oil available for the Newfoundland market.
Oh my goodness!
and then you have the Canada Post strike. So I'm getting people into my shop who are saying my medical CBD oil has been stuck with Canada Post for over a week, and I'm almost out of my medicine, and I don't know where to get it.
Yeah,
and all I had to say is, well, the NLC hasn't got any available, so I'm sorry,
It is such a shame. You're absolutely right. It's not only the supplies that are the problem, but, as you say, the delivery mechanism. It's just not working out really well. So if you were to gauge a success, is there enough success in these last 2 months for you, Thomas?
I think it's a success for me because I've been able to have myself and my wife and 5 of my closest friends employed, and I've been able to pay the bills from doing what I love.
Okay, well, that's pretty. That is a success. Yeah, you're right.
So, I'm not going to get rich at this margin, and I'm certainly not going to get rich off of one retail location in Portugal Cove, but I'll carve out a nice life for myself.
Well, good for you.
And I've got other things down the pipe. I have a trademark called the Wild Newfoundland Blueberry Cannabis Company.
Wow, that's a cool name. I like that.
And I'm currently talking to 3 different licensed producers, and some of them are very interested in producing this blueberry cannabis that I've been perfecting for a long time.
Oh, nice.
So hopefully if I can get a licensed producer to come on board, I'll be growing wild Newfoundland blueberry cannabis and feeding it with iceberg water from harvested icebergs from the coast of Newfoundland. And it'll make it a sought-after craft product, I hope.
It certainly sounds like it would be appealing to me, certainly.
So the blueberry strains that I'm going to pick out, I've been growing different types of blueberry cannabises now for a number of years.
Okay.
So there's a blueberry hash plant and a blueberry bubble gum that I want to get on the market. And I'm actually talking with someone down here by the name of Chris Snellen, who is a geneticist type of guy who's
Okay.
going in with the Memorial University to come up with cannabis genetics. And so I want to have, 5 different strains of blueberry, an indica, which would be over 22% THC, a sativa that would be over 22% THC, and a balanced one, which would have, say, 12 or 13% CBD and THC in it.
Okay.
So down in Newfoundland, the horticultural section of Memorial University is one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
So it'll be great to see now that they're actually investing in cannabis and having some professionals from Israel and from Vancouver involved. It'll be interesting to see what type of strains that we can come up with here in Newfoundland.
You've intrigued me. That all sounds just delicious. I love the fact that you're dealing with that over 20% THC on both the indica and the sativas. That sounds really nice.
I mean that's what people want, right?
Yeah.
And if you truly want to carve out a piece of the recreational market in Canada or anywhere for that matter with cannabis smokers, you need to have a good product. And the stuff I've seen so far, there's the chocolate fondue from DNA Genetics is really nice weed. That's a UK cheese cross.
Yeah.
And other than that, I haven't been impressed by anyone except for the Broken Coast stuff, which has really impressed me.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing about Broken Coast. So, well, I appreciate your thoughts on that. Back to the THC name now. Is Herb really your middle name?
Well, for the purposes of the public eye, it is. My girlfriend likes to tell me that that's my stripper name.
Oh, I like that.
Right? So, my middle name is actually George, but my friends have called me THC as long as I can remember. I started selling cannabis in grade 8.
Of course.
And I have been ever since. Right?
And you're still at it.
Yeah, so a lot of my friends who I've known for years come into the store and say, "Where are they at?" They're Thomas H. Clarke, and they've called me that for years, right?
And it just became your name.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's very cool, Thomas. I like that. And now I understand, as I know that my son did when he was younger and growing up, he took from my stash on occasion. You didn't happen to take anything from your dad growing up, did you?
Oh, yeah, that's where I got my start as well. My dad always had let's call it a brick of Mexican compressed weed. Right? So you can crack off a piece,
Right, yeah, and you'd hope he wouldn't notice.
Mostly growing up in St. John's, most of us smoked hash growing up. It was more available, and the quality back then was way better than the weed. Of course, the weed has come a long way since then.
It has, yeah, absolutely.
But, the Mexican compressed stuff and the Thai stick we used to get, and the old Acapulco Gold.
Oh, yes.
That's not today's super hybrids, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a taste of Acapulco Gold years and years ago, and it truly did live up to its name.
Yeah. And, with the hash that we get on the East Coast is superb because it comes from the Middle East.
Okay.
And it's, you can't hold a candle to it with all that old water hash and bubble hash that everybody makes.
Yeah.
It doesn't hold a candle to the stuff that comes out of the mountains of Afghanistan, that's for sure.
See, now you're making me just salivate thinking of that hashish.
Yes, and that's one thing I want to do before I get too old to do it is I want to go to Morocco, and there's a certain town that's right in between the two mountains where they make all the Moroccan hash.
Okay.
And they say that you can smell it from 50 miles away in any direction, right? So I think I'd like to take a pilgrimage there someday.
Wouldn't that be lovely? I think you just put something into my bucket list too.
Yeah.
Very cool, Thomas.
So,
excellent.
So yeah, that's it. It's going to be tough to make any money at the markup, and $300,000 in sales. That federal tax of $1.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money I made for the government. A lot more than what my commission is.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking some time. Let me finish up with what I call my hot seat questions, Thomas, just to get your kind of quick response to these questions. What's your favorite strain?
Right now, I would say Death Bubba.
Oh, Death Bubba. Excellent. I actually have some of that right now. I would tend to agree.
Yeah, it's really good.
Do you prefer joints or vaping?
I prefer joints,
Okay.
and I like doing dabs of concentrates as well.
Oh, okay. I haven't got into the dabs. What's the biggest appeal for you for the dabs?
Well, it makes your ounce go a long way. If you got an ounce of weed and a gram of shatter and you do a dab, you're not going to smoke a joint for a number of hours, where maybe without the dab you would have smoked 3 or 4 joints.
Oh, okay. Okay. Maybe I should investigate that then.
And it gets, and I find it, flavor. I'm a flavor guy, and it's really, really flavorful. I got this one type that I've been smoking, and it's a sour tangy, and it has extra terpenes put into it, so it's really flavorful.
Oh, nice. Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Speaking of delicious, what's your favorite munchie?
My favorite munchie, like food-wise?
Yeah.
Or for a favorite edible?
Oh, well, actually, give me either one of those, or both.
Well, I'll tell you what, my mom makes a pecan pie that I could die for. and I'm thinking about buying a bottle of cannabis oil and get her to throw that into the mix and have one of those for Christmas.
That sounds really good. And you've kind of answered one of my other questions too, whether it's cake or pie. And if your mom makes a pecan pie, it's probably going to be pie, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and edibles or flour?
Oh, flour for sure. Edibles is a whole different ball game.
It is.
I find and even vaping. I don't enjoy vaping. I don't get the satisfaction that I get with the smoke.
Okay.
And from the edibles, I find this a completely different experience. Like I use an indica edibles for sleeping, but if you overdo it on the sativa edibles, man, oh man, my heart races and I get full of anxiety, and I have a hard time calming down, and that's not what I smoke weed for.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Edibles is kind of the same thing for me. They haven't really done what I've been expecting them to, so the flower is still definitely my favorite. And my final one for you, Thomas, when you since you are a joint man, you'll probably know this. When you have a run that's burning on the joint, do you have a name for that run as it's heading down the joint? Out west,
I have a name for it?
Yeah, out west, I've been told that it's called a canoeing.
A canoe, yeah, we've called it canoeing as well.
Okay, there you go.
Just saying a run, yeah, but I guess a canoe.
Yeah, see, I always called it a run too. It was my son that introduced me to the term canoe, but now I'm hearing more and more people use it.
I've always called it a run as well.
Yeah, maybe it's an age thing.
Yeah, and well, I've spent a lot of time traveling across Canada in my younger years.
Yeah,
and from Toronto west, they say canoe.
Okay, there you go. Now it's de facto. Yeah. We have proof from both coasts now.
Right now.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time to have a chat with me, Thomas. I really appreciate it. A really interesting conversation, and lots of success for you, I hope, in what's happening with THC distribution and all of your strains you want to bring to the market.
Yeah, thanks very much, and I hope so too, and the future is bright.
It is absolutely bright, at least.
I mean, this is the biggest public policy shift of our time.
It's true. And even though there are problems with it, at least cannabis is legalized in Canada, and you and I can smoke it without worrying about anything.
Yes, that's great.
Sounds good, Thomas. Take care. Enjoy your day. Cheers.
THC, CBD, let's talk about the chemistry, explain that strain.
If you joined us on the last episode, you may remember that one of my sons had given a gift to me, wanted me to go to the liquor store, and he was going to pay for it, and I chose instead to order from the BC Cannabis stores. I ordered 3.5 grams, or an eighth, of Broken Coast's Galiano. It took almost a week to get here, but it did arrive yesterday, and now here it is, Broken Coast Galiano, and I have to say that so far from the packaging I've seen, Broken Coast has been the best in that the packaging is appropriate to the size that I purchased, 3.5 grams, and it is one of the tiniest packages I've got so far. Now let's pop the stamp, as we always do, to make sure that it is legal cannabis. And there's that stamp just popped. And we open it up. Another seal for protection on top of the actual jar. And once we pop that, then we get our first sniff of Galiano. Oh. And once again, in terms of the packaging, this is probably the best I've seen. Because this little package is filled to the top. with 3.5 grams of Galiano cannabis, which is a sativa strain, and nice big buds. These are probably some of the biggest buds I've seen so far from the legal cannabis. Oh, and very nice smell. So the terpene profile for Broken Coast Galiano, there's 6 different terpenes that are associated with Galiano. There's caryophyllene, humulene, limonene, linalool, myrcene, and pinene. And when you take a smell of it, you can get that fruitiness, the earthiness, a little bit of the pine scent from the pinene. Very, very sweet. It is so nice that they're giving us these terpene profiles for all of these various strains. Really helps to identify what this is likely to do for you. And this is looking like this is going to be a pretty good sativa. THC on this particular one is coming in at, where is that? There it is. 18.6% is the total THC. That smaller value, which none of us have figured out yet, that's 1.02% THC. And CBD, again, fairly low, 0.03% total, and 0% CBD when the lower value is considered. Galiano's frosty, highly textured buds break up to release a complex and powerful terpene profile, grounded by fresh and fruity notes, exhibiting a subtle natural sweetness on the exhale. This strain is best described as light, clean, and energetic. We put that to the test. Oh, yeah. Satisfies every single criteria we could think of there. Delightful taste, definitely an energetic feeling, a clean feeling. I'm liking Galiano by Broken Coast. Oh, looks like there might be somebody else who likes Galiano. Ho, 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 ho. Oh, that's the energy I need. Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas, everyone. You just never know who's going to show up in this cannabis-infused studio. And that pretty well brings us to a conclusion for this episode, the pre-Christmas episode of the Cannabis Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we have got a whole bunch of different things lined up over the next few episodes. Next week, we are going to be talking with people from the city of Kelowna and the city of Penticton on each of their strategies for their cannabis retail outlets. We'll get some details on that. We're also looking to set up a whole bunch of interviews as we head into the new year. We're looking to speak with the people from the Trichome Institute. Hopefully we'll set something up for that in January. We've got Dana Larson lined up at some point as soon as he can free up a few moments in his busy, busy life. He's agreed to come on and be a guest. And we'll keep looking for interesting strains that we can sample and perhaps do some strain explain. Hope you enjoyed this edition of the Cannabis Podcast.
From the cannabis-infused studio, high above the Okanagan Valley, this was the Cannabis Podcast.